Yeah, I would think the system is broken too if I'm going to spend a lot of years with a bunch of people that I possibly have locked up. Yeah, I would think the system's broken too if I, you know, abuse my authority as a police officer, put my knee on another person's neck, for the second time in a row. He did this in 2017 to a 17-year-old. Okay, so let's begin. Convicted murderer Derek Chauvin says he should get probation instead of prison because the system is broken. Former Minneapolis police officer and convicted murderer Derek Chauvin on Wednesday filed court papers in search of a lighter sentence in the killing of George Floyd Jr. Chauvin's proposed sentence is to walk out of jail later this month on time served and to face the rest of his punishment on stringent terms of probation. You are funny. Among his preferred reasons for the softer sentence, he's the product of a broken system and can still remain an asset to the community. You're funny. You are funny. After the fact that, you were extremely cruel to Mr. George Floyd. He was overdosing. Okay. He should have been handled with care, extra care. If he said he couldn't breathe, you should have taken that seriously. Turned him on his back. All right. Had him called EMS and had him restrained. Okay. Had him sitting right side up. Had him arrested. Put him sitting on the sidewalk and hold him there. Watch him until EMS arrive. That's what you should have done. And you were the leading officer in that situation. Prosecutors on Wednesday countered that Chauvin should be sentenced to 30 years behind bars. Chauvin's latest arguments come after Judge Peter Cahill ruled that Chauvin is eligible for a tougher than usual sentence. Cahill said Floyd was terrified by the knowledge that he would likely die and that Chauvin remained indifferent and abused a position of trust and authority as a police officer. Okay. Cahill also ruled Chauvin treated George Floyd with particularly cruelty while children were present, and that Chauvin committed his crime with the active participation of at least 3 other persons. All of those factors, Cahill ruled, left Chauvin eligible for an upward sentencing departure above what the courts would normally dole out for a defendant convicted of second-degree murder, yet who had no prior criminal history. Minnesota's second-degree murder statute authorizes a sentence for Chauvin of up to 40 years, but a state sentencing grid recommends 150 months, 12.5 years for a man with Chauvin's past. Despite Cahill's ruling, the defense is once again pressing for a softer punishment. Wednesday's filing by defense attorney Eric J. Nelson seeks a mitigated departure. It refashions arguments similar to those Nelson lost during previous skirmishes with prosecutors surrounding Chauvin's appropriate sentence. The defense urges this court to impose a probationary sentence limiting Chauvin's incarceration to time served or an alternative, a downward durational departure. The motion boldly asks, bold indeed. As pre-sentencing investigation PSI was completed and the officer who conducted the PSI concluded that Mr. Chauvin's criminal history score is 0. The motion continues. Mr. Chauvin asked the court to look beyond its findings to his background, his lack of criminal history, his amenability to probation. Criminal history? The man is also facing tax evasion charges. What about that? He's a criminal. Okay. His amenability to probation, to the unusual facts of the case, and his being a product of a broken system. Please. How many cops have been getting away with murdering black people? Okay. Unjustly, not self-defense. And all of a sudden, the system was working for them, right? But now that is convicting a person who is a cop, okay, who maliciously took a human life. Oh, now the system is broken? Oh, now it's unfair? Give me a break. This is why people will say that systematic racism exists, okay? They will say that, and I have to believe it. Mr. Chauvin respectfully requests that this court grant his motion to be mitigated disproportionately departure or, in the alternative, a downward durational departure. Nelson noted that although Chauvin was convicted of 3 crimes, second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree depraved mind murder, and second-degree culpably negligent manslaughter, the possible sentences of those crimes collapsed into but one sentencing calculation on the more severe count. Nelson recapped Chauvin's life story in a light most favorable to his client. Nobody want to hear about the fact Chauvin was born in 1976 to a loving mother and father. Look, don't try to paint this man as some sort of saint. He grew up near the Twin Cities, completed high school in the local suburb. Although Mr. Chauvin, at a young age, struggled to find passion for a particular career, he eventually decided to become a police officer. After years of work, Mr. Chauvin obtained his Bachelor's of Science in Law Enforcement in 2006 while working as a Minneapolis police officer. Mr. Chauvin had a stable job, having worked full-time for the Minneapolis Police Department for 19 years. Chauvin is 45 years old now as he stands before the court, and the time of his offense conduct, he was 44 years old, living with his wife. Mr. Chauvin's age weighs in his favor when determining a sentence. Please, the life expectancy of police officers is generally shorter, and police officers have a slightly higher average probability of death from specific diseases than did males in the general population. Mr. Chauvin is now 44 years old, and is nearing the healthier years of his life. He has been preliminarily diagnosed with heart damage and may likely die at a younger age, like many ex-law enforcement officers. Give me a break. No one cares. No one cares. Okay? The man has a history of abusing his power. You all could do your research and see, like I said, he did this before to a 17-year-old. Okay? Putting his knee on the back of a person's neck. He did this before to a 17-year-old. The motion continues by complaining that the prison would result in long-term damage and that Chauvin would most likely become a target in prison. Oh, well, he should have thought about that before he kept abusing his power. He should have thought about that. He's a police officer. He knows what goes on in prison. Such safety concerns are evident by his pre-sentence solitary confinement in a high-security prison. Nelson wrote, Mr. Chauvin is not the average offender. Prior to this incident, Mr. Chauvin led a hard-working, law-abiding life and has experienced no legal issues until the point of arrest. Mr. Chauvin still has the ability to positively impact his family and his community. How? He gets to home. People are going to come up there picketing. He will have no peace outside of prison walls. He committed a crime. He has to do the time, right? The motion reiterates that Chauvin was completely cooperative with the court and turned himself into custody upon learning that a complaint and warrant had been issued in his case. Nelson next wrote that probation is appropriate for Mr. Chauvin because he has the support network he needs to succeed as he moves past this incident. From the motion at length, in the eyes of the public, Mr. Chauvin has been reduced to this incident, and he has been painted as a dangerous man, which he is, despite serving his community as a police officer for 19 years, in which he abused his power, receiving consistently high scores on his annual reviews, being well regarded by his superiors and peers. Mr. Chauvin has received various honors and commendations for his work in the Minneapolis Police Department, including 2 Medals of Valor, 2 Medals of Commendation, and various life-saving awards. However, behind the positives, Mr. Chauvin is still a human being. Before this incident occurred, Mr. Chauvin was an average man with a loving family and close friends. He was a husband, stepfather, uncle, brother, and son. To this day, Mr. Chauvin has a close relationship with his family and friends, and he benefits tremendously from their support. Please. He has the support of his mother, stepfather, father, stepmother, and sister. Additionally, although they divorced in early 2021, Mr. Chauvin is still supported by his ex-wife, her family, and his former stepchildren. Mr. Chauvin has also received thousands of letters of support since his arrest in 2020 from local and international communities. In spite of his mistakes, Mr. Chauvin has demonstrated that he has a capacity for good and that he has the discipline to consistently work towards worthwhile goals. The motion reads, not only has Mr. Chauvin demonstrated that he can maintain the discipline required to succeed with probation, he has also proven he can be an asset to the community if allowed to remain in it. This is the history of a man who is particularly amenable to treatment, and he should be granted a mitigated suspensional departure. You are crazy. Nelson You have to have no soul to say the crap he's saying. You really do. Knowing the fact that this man has a history of abuse. He has a history of abusing his power. All right? Just disgusting. Nelson then argued that prison time should be minimal if probation was not an appropriate sentence. Here, Mr. Chauvin was unaware that he was even committing a crime. He was what? These are lies, the motion states. In fact, in his mind, he was simply performing the lawful duty and assisting other officers in the arrest of George Floyd. This is the most laughable, disgusting thing ever written. He really is trying hard to get a reputation. Mr. Nelson is really working hard. Pathetic, but you gotta, the work ethic is in the wrong place. That's all I got to say. Mr. Chauvin is not a typical case in which a person commits an assault and that results in the death of another person. As is clear from Mr. Chauvin's actions, had he believed he was committing a crime as a licensed police officer, Mr. Chauvin simply would not have done so. Mr. Chauvin's offense is best described as an error made in good faith, reliance on his own experience as a police officer, and the training he had received, not intentional commission of an illegal act. Really? Mr. Chauvin did not intend to cause George Floyd's death. The motion says, while wrapping up its relevant arguments as to downward departure. Believed he was doing his job. The facts of Mr. Chauvin's case certainly cannot place his offense among the most egregious. All unintentional murder cases such as that, no mitigated departure is warranted. Given the facts of the case, if the court declines to depart downward with respect to disposition, a downward duration of departure is certainly justified. Nelson then attempted to relitigate some of the issues surrounding the upward sentencing departure, while Judge Kyle already granted. Prosecutors argued Wednesday through their own sentencing memorandum that Chauvin should be given no benefit of the doubt and should receive no leniency whatsoever because of the profound impact of Chauvin's conduct on the victim, the victim's family, and the defendant brutally murdered Mr. Floyd, abusing the authority conferred by his badge. His actions traumatized Mr. Floyd's family, the bystanders who watched Mr. Floyd die, and the community. And his conduct shocked the nation's conscience. No sentence can undo the damage defendant's actions have inflicted, but the sentence the court imposes must hold defendant fully accountable for his reprehensible act. In short, the court should order a sentence that is twice the upper end of the presumptive sentencing range. The presumptive sentencing range for defendant's act conviction on the second degree unintentional murder conviction is 120 to 180 months. The state therefore respectfully requests that the court sentence defendant to 360 months or 30 years in prison. Amazing. And that's what should happen. The state's memorandum leaned heavily on the court's previous finding that an upward sentencing departure is legally appropriate. Okay? That is what should happen. Period. Okay? He knew what he was doing. He's done this before. Okay? And he should serve the full sentence for his crime. Okay? And that's it, basically. And you can see how, a lot of people are coming out. Excuse me. A lot of people are coming out. You got some racist white conservatives that are just trying to defend this animal. Go back to blue no matter what. See, when you have those types of mentalities, you're saying back them no matter if you got dirty cops in the force, no matter what. So I get, what about that cop in Ohio, right? No, Oklahoma. I'm sorry, Oklahoma. And he was going around and raping black women who had criminal history. Back to blue, right? Back to blue, right? How about that? Or how about that NYPD cop who went down to Tennessee on vacation, got drunk, brandished his service weapon, opened the wrong door. He thought it was his home, but he was too drunk to understand it was not, and brandished his service weapon at a black family. Back to blue, right? That was right, right? Think about that when you say back to blue, no matter what. All right. Like, share, comment, and subscribe later.